26 Prison Gang Psychology: Why Inmates Join for Survival. In prison, there's a rule no one says out loud. If you walk in alone, you won't walk out the same. Some inmates join gangs for protection. Some join because they're threatened. And others? They join because the human mind can only survive isolation for so long before it clings to any tribe, even one built on fear. Today, we're stepping inside a world most documentaries fear to touch. The mental engine behind prison gangs. Where loyalty is currency, protection is psychology, and survival is determined before your first night on the tier. This isn't about sensationalizing crime. This is about understanding the invisible forces that reshape a human mind behind bars, backed by real research from the National Institute of Justice, the American Psychological Association, and decades of prison sociology. If you think prison gangs exist only because of violence, you're about to witness a truth far more disturbing and far more human. This documentary contains descriptions of prison conditions and violence for educational purposes based on verified sources. Viewer discretion is advised. For more deep research of prison documentary like this, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Every prison has gangs. But every gang has a psychology, a survival system built from fear, identity, hierarchy, and decisions inmates were never prepared to make. According to the CDCR's prison gang management reports, gangs form predictable patterns inside high-security institutions. Controlled movement, restricted space, and constant threat push the brain into survival mode. Dr. Craig Haney, a leading prison psychologist, calls it forced identity formation, a process where the mind reshapes itself to belong or be destroyed. In this documentary, we break down why inmates join gangs even when they don't want to, the psychological pressure created by prison architecture, how fear and belonging override moral choices, what refusing protection actually costs, how group identity becomes a survival instinct, and real psychological models that explain gang expansion. This is the unseen side of incarceration. Not the violence. The psychology. The moment an inmate realizes they're not alone. The first 24 hours in prison determine everything. When an inmate enters a new facility, their brain is in high-alert survival mode. Researchers at the University of Chicago Crime Lab call this period the shock window, the moment the mind becomes hypersensitive to threat, noise, and social cues. Inside this window, something happens that most documentaries never show. Every move the inmate makes is being watched, not by guards, but by gangs assessing whether he is a threat, a recruit, or prey. The inmate doesn't know it yet, but the psychology of group survival is already working on them. They hear the doors slam. They feel the stares from every direction. They notice how inmates cluster. Never alone, always aligned. The brain reads these signals and makes a quiet decision. Find protection, or become a target. This isn't paranoia. This is survival instinct. According to APA research on group behavior, the human brain is wired to seek belonging under threat, even with groups it would never join outside. Inside prison, that instinct is amplified. Some inmates resist. Some try to stay neutral. But neutrality is a myth in a closed environment where every group controls the phones, the showers, the yard, even the benches. And this is where the psychology becomes unavoidable. In prison, the need for safety becomes stronger than the need for independence. The first approach, how gangs recruit without asking. It rarely starts with a threat. In fact, most recruitment begins with something far more subtle. A favor. A seat in the dining hall. A warning about which shower not to use. A pack of ramen left on the bunk. These aren't kindnesses. They're psychological tests. According to the National Institute of Justice, prison gangs use incremental bonding, a strategy where small acts of support build dependency long before a formal offer is made. It's a method built on human psychology. If someone helps you during your weakest moment, your brain labels them as safe, even when they're not. The inmate doesn't realize they're being evaluated. Every reaction, gratitude, fear, hesitation, confidence, becomes information. In one case study referenced by Dr. Craig Haney, An inmate described his first week as walking through a hallway of invisible contracts. Every nod, every warning, every shared meal carried meaning. And here's the truth no one wants to admit. Gangs don't recruit you. Your fear recruits you, and they just answer the call. If an inmate accepts help, even once, the gang sees an opening. If he refuses, that's also a signal, one that can be misinterpreted as disrespect. Inside these walls, psychology becomes a weapon. The new inmate learns fast. Neutrality isn't a position. It's an illusion. The unwritten rule, stick with your own. In the outside world, identity is a choice. In prison, identity is assigned. The CDCR gang behavior data shows that most inmates do not join gangs for ideology. They join based on race or region because the prison environment forces people into visible categories for safety. Not loyalty. Not belief. Just survival. Sociologist John Irwin described this as the tribalization of confinement. When people are placed under constant threat, they default to the group that looks like them, speaks like them, or comes from their neighborhood. It happens fast. A black inmate is expected to sit with black inmates. A Hispanic inmate is expected to sit with Hispanic groups. A white inmate with white groups. The inmate may not want this. He may have lived his entire life without thinking this way. But prison isn't built for individuality. It's built for order. And the moment he sits at the wrong table, the psychology shifts. He's no longer perceived as confused. He's perceived as a possible threat, or worse, a spy. In the words of one APA-cited correctional study, identity becomes a survival shield. Without it, the inmate is unprotected. And so the inmate chooses, or is chosen, not because they want to join a gang, but because the environment makes every other option more dangerous. The cost of refusal. What happens when an inmate tries to stay alone? Most documentaries skip this part because it challenges the idea that joining a gang is always a choice. According to multiple correctional psychology studies, including research from the University of Chicago Crime Lab, inmates who refuse gang association face 3 immediate pressures. 1. Social isolation. The inmate finds quickly that no group is willing to sit with him, walk with him, or claim him. Isolation in a high-threat environment magnifies fear, which the APA calls hypervigilant survival mode. This mental state drains the mind, causing constant stress, sleeplessness, and paranoia. And that's exactly when gangs watch the closest. Because fear creates vulnerability, and vulnerability breeds dependence. 2. Restricted access. Neutral inmates learn that basic activities become risky. Using the phone, eating alone, showering alone, walking the yard without a group. Correctional officers can monitor behavior, but they can't escort an inmate through every moment of his day. Gangs know it. The inmate knows it. Everyone knows it. This isolation creates a psychological squeeze, a slow tightening of fear until the inmate feels cornered. 3. Misinterpretation as disrespect. The most dangerous pressure is social misreading. If an inmate refuses contact from gangs trying to look out for him, it can be seen as an insult, rejection, or a sign that he's connected elsewhere. This misunderstanding can escalate tension even when the inmate has no intention of disrespecting anyone. One former inmate interviewed in a CDCR case analysis explained it like this. If you say no to everyone, you're not neutral, you're suspicious. Suspicion in prison is a psychological trigger. It activates defensive instincts among groups who already live with constant threat sensitivity. The inmate now walks the yard with eyes on him, not because he joined the wrong group, but because he joined none. The pressure builds. By the end of the first week, the mental stress becomes a silent force pulling him toward a group, any group. Not for identity. Not for belonging. For survival through predictability. When danger can come from any side, the brain begs for a structure, even if that structure is a gang. This is why, as Dr. Craig Haney documented, refusal is often harder on the mind than conformity. And this psychological truth is one of the biggest reasons inmates join gangs long before they understand the consequences. The moment of no return, when protection becomes a contract. There's a point in every inmate's journey where survival stops being a choice and becomes an arrangement. It doesn't always happen during a fight. Sometimes, it happens during something as simple as walking through the yard. According to the National Institute of Justice, the most common moment inmates are absorbed into a gang is during heightened vulnerability events, moments when the inmate is exposed, alone, or targeted by another group. These events often act as psychological catalysts. And it usually starts like this. A threat that isn't loud, it's quiet. A rumor. A stare. A warning whispered from someone you barely know. You shouldn't walk there alone. They're asking about you. Someone thinks you disrespected them. The inmate may not even know what happened, but in prison psychology, perception matters more than truth. The brain reacts instantly. Fight or panic. But neither works here. That's when a group steps in, not with violence, but with presence. A few inmates walk beside him. One says, "You're good with us today." Another settles near his table at chow. They don't ask anything. They don't declare anything. They simply show up. And the inmate breathes again. This moment, this single breath of safety, is the trap door most people outside never understand. The psychological bond forms instantly. According to APA research on high-threat environments, humans form dependency bonds under danger, emotional links created not by friendship, but by relief from fear. The mind remembers one thing. When I was scared, they defended me. That memory becomes powerful, stronger than logic, stronger than resistance. It becomes a survival anchor. Unspoken rules appear. After this, things start changing. The inmate starts sitting near them. They save him a seat without asking. He gets small nods from people he never met. Others stop staring at him. This shift isn't accidental. It's the beginning of an unspoken contract, one built entirely on psychology, not violence. According to CDCR behavior studies, gangs rely on this silent transition more than any initiation ritual. It's subtle, natural, almost invisible. But the truth is harsh. The moment they protect you once, you owe them, even if no one says it out loud. Psychologically, this is the moment of no return. Not because the inmate joined. Not because he made a promise. Not because he wants to be part of anything. But because the brain now associates this group with survival. And survival instincts overpower logic every single time. This is the hidden engine of prison gang psychology. You don't join a gang. Your circumstances join you for them. Loyalty, fear, and the mind, the psychology of inmate commitment. Once the silent contract is formed, the inmate faces a new reality. Loyalty is no longer a choice, it's a survival strategy. According to Dr. Craig Haney's research on prison psychology, this is where the mind begins to reshape itself completely. The inmate must navigate a delicate balance between fear of the gang. Failing them can be dangerous. Fear of rivals, standing apart invites attack. Desire for protection, accepting the gang provides safety. The brain quickly learns, loyalty equals life. The mental cost of commitment. Being part of a gang is not just social, it's cognitive. The brain now divides the prison world into enemies, unknown threats. Every decision is filtered through this triad. According to NIJ studies on prison behavior, even mundane actions, like moving through the yard or talking in the day room, are influenced by this mental map. Psychologists call this continuous threat assessment. It's exhausting, it's invisible, and it's mandatory for survival. The paradox of freedom. Interestingly, once loyalty is formed, inmates often feel more secure, yet less free. More secure because they have allies in a hostile environment. Less free because leaving the gang is no longer safe. University of Chicago crime lab researchers describe this as a psychological double bind. Your safety depends on submission, and your submission reinforces dependency. Many inmates report, "I don't feel like I joined them, they just became my life." The gang is no longer just a group. It's a psychological shield. The invisible chains. The mind begins to obey rules that were never written. Sit with your people. Watch who enters your territory. Avoid eye contact with rivals. Always remember who has your back. Breaking these invisible rules isn't just social rebellion, it can be life-threatening, which is why the brain internalizes them so quickly. And here's the most important part. The gang doesn't demand your loyalty, your survival does. This is why inmates who swear they just want to stay clean often find themselves fully committed within weeks. Psychology, not ideology, has claimed them. The escalation, violence, power, and the role of psychology. Once an inmate is embedded within a gang, the psychology of survival intensifies. It's no longer just about personal protection. It becomes about power, reputation, and influence. According to the CDCR gang management reports, prisons operate like micro-societies. Every gang member becomes a node in a complex network of control, loyalty, and social signaling. The brain responds to this system in ways that are deeply instinctual. Fear triggers vigilance. The mind constantly monitors rivals and allies. Status drives behavior. Gaining respect reduces risk. Losing it increases danger. Allegiance solidifies identity. Membership transforms from survival strategy to core self-perception. Inmates quickly learn that psychology is as powerful as muscle. A well-timed nod, glance, or warning can prevent conflict just as effectively as physical strength. The role of violence and power dynamics. Violence is not random. It is strategically psychological. Research from the National Institute of Justice shows that gangs often use selective aggression to reinforce loyalty within the group, send a clear warning to outsiders, maintain hierarchy without constant confrontation. The mind adapts rapidly. Fear becomes a tool, not just a reaction. Inmates learn to anticipate conflict before it happens, a survival skill honed through observation, intuition, and social psychology. Even those who never intended to use violence find themselves caught in this escalation. What begins as protection becomes participation, and participation becomes identity. The long-term psychological impact. Dr. Craig Haney notes that prolonged gang membership reshapes mental patterns permanently. Hypervigilance becomes a default state. The brain constantly assesses threat and allegiance. Emotional responses are filtered through the lens of survival strategy. This is why leaving a gang is rarely simple. The mental structures formed during early survival stages make detachment psychologically and socially dangerous. In essence, prison gangs don't just protect, they remold the mind. Reflection and call to action. Prison gangs are more than a headline. They are a window into the human mind under extreme pressure. What starts as fear becomes dependency. What begins as survival becomes loyalty. And what seems like choice often isn't choice at all, it's psychology at work. Understanding these forces is essential, not to glorify prison life, but to reveal the hidden dynamics of human behavior when pushed to the edge. If this deep dive into prison gang psychology opened your eyes, make sure to like, comment, and share this video. Subscribe now to explore more documentaries that uncover the hidden realities behind human behavior, crime, and survival. Turn on notifications to never miss an inside look at the psychology that shapes the world behind bars.